Now with David, same question.
Like, like everybody has said, my wife and I bought in here because of the beauty, because of the nature. But if I was talking to those 30-year-olds that you asked about, I would tell them that it's a great community, we're caring neighbors, but like family, we have our issues, but when it comes down to it, the people are there for each other to help. And I think we all saw that during the ice storm, where everybody came together as a community to fix the roads, get people, see if anybody needed help and so forth.
Harris?
If I were trying to encourage young people to move here, I would tell them what a friendly community this is. The people are wonderful. We have good education. The schools are great. We have parks where kids can go and play. We have trails, recreation here. And I would encourage them and have encouraged them to move in here. You also have your privacy because the lots are typically fairly large. You don't have someone right on your doorstep, and which means a lot to me.
I think I can echo what's been said already. We, for the first time in our lives, after serving in the Air Force for 30 years, 22 years in Boeing Company all over the world for another 16 after that, we finally feel like we found a home. And home is where your heart is. And I would tell young people, what you need to look for is a place where you can know your neighbor knows you, and the neighbor cares about you. And we find that here. We really do feel like we found a home. And all the other things that have been mentioned, beauty, the nature, even, the surrounding communities, the churches are great. I tell you, I would encourage any young person to come and get into a community like this where you've got such a huge resource of experienced people that are willing to help and be your mentor and be your helper. So I'd say, come on in. Let's have a good time together.
Well, I already told you why we moved here, so you already know that, and that is exactly what I would tell people as well. It's a wonderful place to live. It's like living in a state park. But I think it is important, if you were a person who was even 10 years out from retiring, and we're going to buy a house, and I know there are a lot of houses. There's a couple on our road that people have bought well in advance of retirement. I think that unless we have the low dues that we have, we wouldn't attract people who were looking that far out in the future. Sometimes 5 and 10 years, if they're thinking that they're going to be here for a few months, a month at a time, and leave the house empty. If you had the dues that you had at Fairfield Glade, you would have to rent it in order to afford it. So in addition to all the beauty and the peacefulness that we have here, I remember my husband and I drove out to the, this came up last night because we were looking at the meteor, try to find meteors. We saw 2. And I was like, we drove out to our lot after dark and turned off everything in the car and stepped outside, taking our lives at risk. Who knew where that bear was? But looked up, and then looking at the stars and hearing nothing was just amazing. We lived in a small town. We were 2 blocks from the hospital. So of course we heard the 2 railroads in town. We heard the helicopters go in. We heard the ambulances going to the hospital. We heard a lot of things, traffic included, even a mile away on the interstate. So it's a great place to live, and that's what I would tell young people. You can love it here. No place is ever without its disagreements and problems, but it's still a wonderful place.
Questions? Any others? Before we get back to you, Ben, we'll get back to you. June? Ed?
Ed McSweeney. I have a question. I think I pretty well know the opinion of most of the members up there. I'd like to ask them. Our bylaws allow the board, the president of our board, to make decisions that, without knowing whether the majority of the board supports that decision. These are decisions that may affect policy. Do you feel that this is proper, or do you feel that the board majority should support decisions that affect policy?
I'm not familiar with the bylaw that allows that, but if it does, I would say that the only time that I would really be comfortable with a president taking that kind of action would be in an extreme emergency. I can't even imagine that one would want to do that. You would think that he would want to at least check with the rest of the board, or 2/3 of the board, or somebody to get some backing before he jumped to a conclusion and made a decision without the backing of the board. So I certainly would take a look at that particular bylaw. If it allows that, then I think we ought to take a real hard look at it.
Any other questions from out here? I'll get back to you, Commissioner Ward.
Wait, just,
Go ahead.
Anybody? To anybody?
You,
No, but.
oh, to anybody, yeah, or all of them, or all of them.
My name is George Diaz, and the question is to Mr. Vandergriff. And one of his responses to the questions sent by the committee, he said that the covenants and the bylaws have not been enforced totally. And my question to him, since he's been in the board the longest time, why not? And whose responsibility is?
Okay,
Microphone.
a good example of not enforcing the covenants as they are written is on trailers and things like that. The covenant says they have to be out of sight or under a shed, but the code in the past, the ECC, it may have been directed, I don't know, because it was going on before my time, but they basically have not enforced it across the board. There are people that are in violation, but the ECC requires them to have somebody put a complaint in writing, where, they may see it, but they won't take action. And yet, other times, there's certain people in the community who flaunted orders by the ECC who have been really come down on hard. Did that answer your question?
No, I thought the UCC is dependent of the board. Why does the UCC operate independently of the board in regards to those situations?
All I can say is when I was president, I told them to enforce the covenants across the board. That was my directive to them. If we don't like the covenants, and change it. I have no problem with changing the covenants. Now, it's a tremendous process. We have to go out to every member that has a lot out here and have over 500 votes come in wanting to change the covenants. So realistically, I don't think you'll ever change the covenants. I don't think that that's possible. But if we have covenants, and when everybody in here signed that deed, they agreed to abide by the covenants. They agreed to that. But we have people that, and unfortunately, feel like the covenant's for somebody else, not themselves. And why we haven't enforced them across the board, other than that, I don't know.